News.
Welcome to the Pat Sheranian Show. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and happy to have you with us on radio and on streaming video on the internet. My wonderful guest today is Diana Hoffman. Diana, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Pat.
She has a wonderful background and comes with 2 years of experience on radio, not just locally, but around the country. In fact, I think into Canada also. Is that right?
That's correct.
So we're happy to have her with us. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Brigham Young University and a Master's of Counseling degree from the University of Phoenix. She's also studied clinical hypnosis at the University of Utah, and we're going to tell you much more about her and go into her subject over the next hour. We're going to have commercials right now, but you stay with us because you're going to find this very, very interesting. So come on back.
Are you an athlete looking for a natural boost to your workout? Have you studied up on the benefits of nitric oxide production to your performance? Then you'll want to try Kyani's Nitro Extreme. Nitro Extreme promotes cardiovascular health and improved blood flow, supports muscle contraction and relaxation, as well as nerve transmission. I use Nitro Extreme right before I lift weights, and I've never been stronger in my entire life. If you don't try Nitro Extreme, you'll never know what you're missing. Call 801-362-9552 to order yours today. That's 801-362-9552.
I'm back. This is Pat Sheranian, and I want you to know how happy I am to be broadcasting again. Please join me and friends at 12 o'clock noon on KHQN 1480 AM and on the internet, pat.utahvalleylive.com. We talk about religion, politics, local businesses, relationships, and more. Join in the conversation in our chat room with your questions and comments or call 801-362-9552. 801-362-9552. I'm back. Thank you. And yes, we are back, and I am back and happy to be there. Hey, I hope you got through Christmas okay and enjoying this week. Somehow we all let down between Christmas and New Year's, and we're glad that you've decided to be with us today, whether you're in your car or home with your feet propped up or maybe working a little bit to catch up. My guest is Diana Hoffman, and as I mentioned earlier, she has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Brigham Young University, a Master's of Counseling degree from University of Phoenix. She studied clinical hypnosis at the University of Utah. Goodness, girl, what have you been doing with your time but going to school? And I understand you're married and have a family.
Well, I do. My children are all grown now.
So it's possible, but you didn't get all these in the last year. So you
Right. It's been a very busy decade.
It's been a very busy one. She also has some other things, degrees that I want her, and license that I want her to tell you about, because we're going to be talking about some of these things today that make a difference in our lives, each and every one of us. So let's see, you're a licensed professional counselor in Utah, as well as nationally certified counselor through the National Board of
Certified Counselors.
Certified
That's
Counselors, okay. And then you've studied trauma release therapy, and we're going to have to talk about that.
That's right. I've really made it a point since I began my counseling practice to do everything I can to get up to date on modern trauma therapy. So I've been going to some of the very top conferences in the nation and picking up seminars by some of the traveling experts and trying to really stay on top of the cutting edge of trauma therapy. So I've been studying under some really excellent people like William Cluft and Bruce Perry and Maggie Phillips, and really outstanding people, so I can bring information about what we know right now.
And we're going to talk about what you know right now, but I want to get the rest of these out. You've mentioned a couple of other things here. She has been a host on Healing Talk Radio for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and is raising awareness for self-help through the mental health and relationship resources. And she's been hosting, I guess, since April of 2010.
That's correct. And I have a website. My radio blog is at healingtalkradio.com. And you can go there and you can see all of the programs that we've talked about in the last year and some of the the subjects that have been really important. I also have a page on that blog that gets all the research, the references, the books that you can go to find out about this information.
Now, you've got, you're the owner of Light Spring Counseling Center in Salem, Utah, and I didn't know that. So let's just spend a second or two on that and tell me a little bit about what you're doing there.
Okay, well, Light Spring Counseling Center it's a collaboration between 5 different therapists. I started it in about 2002 to bring counseling services to South Utah County, because at that time there was nothing south of Springville. And so we have 5 therapists there. We offer all sorts of state-of-the-art services, and we're right in Salem on the bank of Salem Pond. The phone number is 801-735-7814, and there's also a website at lightspringcounseling.com.
Let's do that phone number again, 735-7834?
7814.
7814. Okay, let's do it right. 801-735-7814.
That's correct.
All right,
thank you,
very
Pat.
good. Okay, because we want people to have that. When I was growing up, my mother was single for many, many years, and most of my life, and she just had a tough time. She had 5 sisters, and we did not live close to all of them. After I was a teenager, we had moved from the South out to Utah. She really had a hard time, always around Mother's Day for whatever reason, but especially between Thanksgiving and New Year's. But over the years, she wasn't the only one. A lot of people seem to have a lot of problems between these holiday seasons. They miss family, or they want it to be like it used to be, or like it should be, or like it could be. Have you found that in your practice, that there is definitely a holiday situation with many people?
Yes, there definitely is. Christmas is a time of great excitement for a lot of people, and it's a time of real emotional challenges for many others. And it doesn't take very much painful experience to turn our associations on their head if we don't know how to deal with those painful experiences. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But so we end up with people who've lost a loved one, and so Christmas just isn't the same. Or they had some disappointing childhood experiences, and Christmas is something they avoid. Just whatever associations that are negative can make this a really hard time, and the same is true with Mother's Day. And then on top of that, we have Christmas almost on top of the winter solstice, so it's the time of year when people are getting the least amount of sunlight of the entire
That's true.
year.
I didn't think about that.
So we have this vitamin D deficiency, we have this seasonal affective kind of effect, and you're going to expect depression to just biologically kind of peak at Christmas time, which is why it's a great idea to have this wonderful holiday there to sort of counteract that. But it doesn't always do the complete job.
It's tough. It's really hard for a lot of people to get through, and I appreciate that you're going to tell us a little bit more about it and maybe come up with some ways of healing ourselves as we go along the way. One of the reasons that Diana's on the air with me today is that this is kind of a new venture for her, because she's used to doing her shows alone, and I am interviewing her, so a little different format. She's also syndicated, as I mentioned, on a number of other radio stations. So the streaming video live with the camera and the radio with the microphones, a little bit new for her, but she's looking forward to perhaps making some changes and joining us here at KHQN AM 1480. And we're very happy about that. And, of course, pat.utahvalleylive.com. And for those of you that she sent out emails to, welcome to our show, and hope that you will stay with us, and we're looking forward to perhaps having Diana with us. So this is kind of a trial test. She'll be doing the show alone at this hour, if we can work this out. What do you think?
I think this is a wonderful new adventure, Pat, and I'm so excited with what you've put together here, where you're live streaming internet video as well as radio at the same time.
It's challenging.
I just think, yeah, it is, but I think it's so much more personable to know that you have a visual connection with the audience.
Now, I'm going to ask, if you are a friend, have been a friend, and you're out there, if you can find our chat room, which should be easy. It should be under the picture you're looking at. If you're out on pat.utahvalleylive.com, would you let us know in our chat room, say hi, so that we know you're there and where you're from. And you can use your initials, and she probably would recognize that. So we can see it on the monitor in front of us. If you choose to join us, ask a question, or wish her well. How's that?
That would be wonderful. Yes,
great.
Yes, I welcome all of you to say hi.
Now, I want to get into the counseling center, you mostly are seeing what type of person there down in Salem? Is it across the board, or?
I do see all sorts of clients, but the people who seem to be drawn to my counseling center and the referral base that is the biggest for me is anxiety, trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So I get a lot of people who are recovering from some kind of abuse or traumatic experiences.
Well, death falls into that category, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
I just before I left home here in Provo to come over to the station, I received an email that a cousin, a very dear cousin, passed away on the 26th. Yeah, and it was, I haven't seen him, but it's been 15 years since I was with him. But as kids, we saw each other practically every weekend when these 6 sisters would all get together, our mothers, and we spent time at the beach. And I had some rough moments for about half hour, and I'm still working on it because I go back and remember all the wonderful times we had, and I always felt like I could pick up the phone and call him, which we didn't so much because I was this direction, they're on the East Coast. But boy, it hits you when you say, well, I know I'll see them again, but they're gone.
Yes.
And there is feeling, a lot of feeling that I was not expecting that came welling up inside of me. And I thought, goodness sakes, I didn't know that. It's not that you don't care, but I know the answers. I know where people are. I know where they're going. I know where my daughter is. And yet there are times and moments that it just almost overcomes you. So
Yes.
Good to have people that can help us through that. I've never suffered from a lot of anxiety, but I know people that have, and thank goodness they have places they can go. So let's give out your phone number again for people that are interested in finding you, because this time of year is very, very difficult. And it's 801-735-7814. 735-7814. And I'm speaking with Diana Hoffman. Now, let's talk about what you do.
All right.
And what you talk about when you're on the air and what your objectives are. You can answer any of those questions.
All right. Well, to start with, I'm going to talk about some things that I do, but I'm going to talk about a lot of things that I don't do because I'm just very interested in everything that we're learning about the brain and about therapy and about self-help techniques, things that we can do for ourselves to be mentally healthy. And there's so much information and so much new direction in psychology today that the transformation of psychology is almost as dramatic as what happened to the medical community when antibiotics were introduced. Major, major changes. And so I'm not about to limit my discussion to the things that I do in my office, although I do some of these things. But there's a great deal out there that's really wonderful and exciting and that everybody needs to know about.
All right. Well, let's get started. You start with the brain. So I want to talk about that. I was introduced to some things up in Logan at the university up there about 4 or 5 years ago. And I found it absolutely fascinating what has been discovered about the brain and emotions in the brain. And they actually show up on photographs and just all kinds. They were showing us all the many ways that now we can look for tumors and why people are schizophrenic and why they are mentally impaired. It was just amazing to see this, to actually see what was happening in the brain.
That's right. We have now things like PET scans and SPECT scans, which can show which parts of the brains are active during certain activities or certain emotions. And the brain will just literally light up on a PET scan or a SPECT scan. You can see what part of the brain is taking up sugar and using energy. You can analyze it using magnetic resonance. And so we know all of these things about the brain. And some of them are really exciting. One of the most exciting discoveries that we have recently in the last decade is what we call neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change and to grow during any part of the lifespan. This is really a dramatic change from where we were 15 or 20 years ago when we believed that the brain only grows new neurons during pregnancy and infancy, early infancy. And after that, what you've got is what you've got. If you kill them or damage them, they're gone. We know now that's not true. We know that people are growing neurons, repairing, healing, changing their brains throughout their lifespan. And there's certain things that we can do to interfere with that process, and there's certain things we can do to really enhance it and encourage it and develop it. And so, for instance, if you look at neuroplasticity, some of our best research comes from what we call the NUN studies. And the NUN studies were started at the University of Minnesota.
Okay. All right, go.
Yeah. Like
now, this is interesting. I don't know anybody that would not be interested in this. So I find this. You had said these subjects were very interesting.
Right. And why is the nun study important? Well, part of it is important because every one of us faces old age, and we're looking at Alzheimer's and dementia. What causes them, and can you prevent them? And with an awful lot of things that go on in our brain, we've started taking the attitude over the last 20 or 30 years that it's mostly genetic, and a lot of times we can't really help it. And that's not true.
Neither of those are acceptable.
Right.
It may be true in some cases, but I don't think you can put a blanket over that and say, okay, everyone, this is why. I remember years ago hearing that if you had too much iron metal in your mouth, it would cause brain cancer, it would cause dementia, and or if you had or different metal thing, in your body. I don't know if that's true or not. But then if that's true, why is there Alzheimer's? What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's, and how are they created? And are we all susceptible?
This is such a great question, and a lot of those questions are being answered by the nun studies. In the nun studies, 600 nuns in Catholic convents agreed to donate their brains to science when they died. And so every time they die, first of all, the researchers have kept careful track of their lives and their mental clarity ever since the study started, and it's still ongoing. But every time these nuns die, they donate their brains to science, and they're studied by these researchers. And some astonishing things have been discovered. One of them is that about 20% of these nuns have all of the damage and the plaques in their brain that we associate with Alzheimer's, but they didn't have any dementia. They had something about them that was completely resistant to the symptoms of Alzheimer's. So they really did have the disease. They had the plaques and they had the damage in their brains, but they were staying mentally clear. Yes.
Okay.
They had Alzheimer's with no symptoms, basically. This is very important. Researchers really wanted to know why, and there have been a lot of studies on these nuns to figure out what's the factor, what's the difference. And what they're finding is that these nuns were intellectually active throughout their midlife and their old age. Specifically, they had rich language. When they wrote about something, when they wrote in their journals or when they wrote life histories, their writing was packed with ideas.
They didn't use letters for words.
Right.
Like we text message.
Right. And
okay.
These are people who are learning languages throughout their life, who are studying, who are reading, who are gardening. Basically, what the nun study tells us is that if we keep exercising our brain, we can grow new neurons fast enough to replace the ones being damaged by Alzheimer's. And that's profoundly important.
Okay, but then if I take the other side of that, what you're saying is that people that wind up with Alzheimer's, with the symptoms, with the disease, are doing the complete opposite. They're sitting and watching television, not reading, not studying.
Right. Television is going to be a big risk factor. And we see that when people retire, either they choose to be active, they serve, they go on missions, they study, they help out in the community, or they do some part-time job, or else they become sedentary. And sedentary and Alzheimer's are closely related. Now, I don't want people to think that everyone who got Alzheimer's earned it or deserved it, because there are other risk factors for Alzheimer's. For instance, high blood pressure appears to increase the risk of Alzheimer's. Diabetes appears to increase the risk. And so there are some physiological factors and some medical factors that play into Alzheimer's, and we don't know what they all are yet. Hormone imbalances like low estrogen can play into Alzheimer's. And I'm sure there's other factors. So when we see a person with Alzheimer's, we don't really know that they were sedentary and not exercising their brain. But what we do know is that late onset Alzheimer's, the main kind, is not hereditary. It's not inherited. It doesn't run in families.
That would be a relief to a number of people.
Right. No,
because they're concerned.
Right. There is an early onset Alzheimer's that is hereditary, but it's rare. It's less than 15%. So what we're looking at is, in most cases, Alzheimer's is late onset, and in most cases, we can counteract it if we want to work hard enough to grow our brains.
Stay with us. We'll be right back after this commercial break. I'm speaking today with Diana Hoffman, and she is going to be a regular with us, I do believe, because I find this very fascinating, and I think that you will too. So we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Mary Louise Zeller. I'm an independent distributor with Kayani, and I've also achieved the rank of Blue Diamond inside of 3 years. I have a degree in biology. I have studied the research on our trio of products that Kayani refers to as the triangle of health. These 3 products work together synergistically and have more power in changing health. Many network marketing companies bring healthy products to market, some not so healthy, but many of them do. They've brought good products to market. This triangle of health product, Kayani Nitro Effects, our 3rd product, is a life-changing product. It is backed by Nobel Prize-winning research. Nitric oxide is called the molecule of life. It's necessary for all cell function, the repair, the defense, the maintenance, and function of every cell in your body. It is responsible for whether or not you have cardiovascular health or cardiovascular disease. When you have sufficient levels of nitric oxide in your body, you will have cardiovascular health. That was proved by that Nobel Prize-winning research. Nitric oxide is a neurotransmitter, and that is the way all of the cells in your body operate as a unified organism, and it's also the way your brain works. So nitric oxide is fundamental to life. You can live 5 minutes without oxygen. You can only live 5 seconds without nitric oxide. This product is consistent with my commitment to have a body that will do my dreams, that I can do my athletics all my life. And these 3 products, nitric oxide precursor product, that's very important because synthetic nitric oxide is dangerous. It has side effects. This is plant sourced, and it is a precursor that your body will use these nutrients in this formulation to produce nitric oxide. Very, very important to having outstanding high performance health and ageless body all the days of your life, but in combination with a Kayani Sunset and Kayani Sunrise, the antioxidant Sunrise, and Kayani Sunset, the omega-3 fish oils with tocotrienols, protecting your body from cancer, improving cardiovascular health. In 40 years of researching natural supplementation for health, anti-aging, and high performance, I have never come across products that made this much fundamental difference, slowing the aging process, actually reversing the aging process, and high performance. As a high performance athlete, I've never seen anything in 40 years give me the performance I experienced with Kayani's Triangle of Health products.
Hi, you're watching the Pat Sheranian Show on KHQN. You are listening, if you're at 1480 AM, we hope that you are. You're watching on pat.utahvalleylive.com, and my guest is Diana Hoffman, and we're talking about the brain. I don't know what could be more important to each one of us, and we're talking right now about Alzheimer's and dementia. Tell me a little bit about the difference in these 2 diseases.
Okay.
Because when I was growing up, everybody had dementia. I mean, that's what they knew.
Right.
And then you reach a stage where suddenly Alzheimer's enters the scene, and it is devastating, and it kills you.
Okay. The difference is that dementia is a word describing the symptoms, and Alzheimer's is a specific progression of a disease. So a person can get dementia from a stroke. They can get dementia from a severe nutritional imbalance. They can develop dementia as a result of some psychological illness, or they can develop dementia from Alzheimer's. Dementia means you're losing your memory, you don't know where you are, you're losing the ability to take care of yourself. There's disorientation, sometimes there's hallucinations.
Okay.
That's what dementia means.
Okay. So Alzheimer's or dementia is part of Alzheimer's.
Right.
It's describing one situation. Okay.
Right, and Alzheimer's is one disease that causes dementia out of many.
Okay. All right. And so have we, we're talking about the brain now, and you just mentioned that people that stay active seem to have less problem.
That's right. And there's a really wonderful book associated with the Nun study called Aging with Grace. This is by Dr. David Snowden, the man who created the Nun study, and it's still ongoing. This is a wonderful book, Aging with Grace, because it talks about all of the things we've learned from these nuns about how to keep our brains active and our lives beautiful in old age, and how to avoid these problems of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Well, I have friends that can't turn on a computer, and they're in their 60s, and I have other friends that are in their 80s, and they're sending email all the time. They do read a lot of information that comes through the internet. Out of those groups, are we looking at people that have just kind of given up? They're not trying to do new things or get involved electronically with anything? Are we looking at groups of people that are more apt to have Alzheimer's?
Well, certainly
or dementia?
Learning technology and learning to use the computer is one area of stretching and exercising our brains, but it's not the only area. We can have people who effectively avoid Alzheimer's without ever turning on a computer by learning a new language and going out to the soup kitchen and engaging with people and helping the homeless, or by going on missions later in life.
So I hear you saying stay active.
That's right.
Mentally, physically, stay active.
Right.
Don't give up just because you reached an age that sounds like Grandma and Grandpa's, that you should be
Absolutely
active.
right.
And you mentioned something about early stage, or early in your life.
Early onset,
yes. And
there is one kind of Alzheimer's that's an early onset that's genetic. It's related to damaged chromosome. It typically shows up age 65 or younger. And that one is much more difficult. That one's much more of a problem, but that's not what most of us are dealing with.
How does it actually kill somebody? I mean, how do they die from Alzheimer's or dementia?
That's a very interesting question. My guess would be that these plaques, these damaged areas of tissue in the brain, finally interfere with some of the vital functions of the brainstem, because our brainstem keeps us alive. It makes us breathe. It regulates our blood pressure, our hormones. If those parts of the brain get damaged, then a person's not going to live any longer.
If you have time, I want you to go to this meeting with me tonight, if for no other reason, to hear them talk about these the Kyani products that literally melt away the plaque in the brain and throughout the body, particularly the heart area. And that's what it was designed for, as a triple tri-pack. So if you have time, go with me, because then I'll let you talk about it, the Kyani. All right. Now, there are a couple of things I'd like to ask you. For instance, let's go back to the trauma, the post-traumatic stress disorder, because I was watching some program the other day with all of our soldiers that are coming back. And do you know what? Even if they're standing up and walking, they've been traumatized. And
Absolutely.
if you listen to some of them talk and hear their heartache in some of the interviews, and if you know any personally, then you know that's true. They've seen things, most of them, that they shouldn't have to see in a lifetime. And they may sound okay and look okay, but actually they have a tough time getting jobs. They have a tough time coming back to the family that really has little way of understanding what they've been through.
That's absolutely true. And one of the most tragic and disturbing statistics I've come across in my research is the fact that 30% of our homeless population today are veterans.
Oh.
Most of them from the Vietnam War. Okay, Vietnam War, that was a long time ago.
Oh, my goodness.
And these are our homeless population. These are people who are so mentally disrupted by PTSD and addiction that they are out on the streets. And that is tragic. And we need to not have this happen to today's veterans. We have got to stop. We've got to interrupt the course of this PTSD before these men lose their lives.
Is there a recovery from that? I mean, is there a way we say, yes, this is what it is post-traumatic stress, but is there a way to recover from it? And if there is, why haven't we been talking about it all these years? Why are we still discovering people that have suffered and no one's taken notice or given up? Maybe they don't know the answer. So
right. And the problem is that the technology for resolving PTSD is relatively new, and it's not well known and widespread. But we do have ways of fixing this, fixing it completely, fixing it really effectively. We can give these men their lives back. And I'm speaking not only from the research, but from personal experience. I have had Vietnam veterans come into my office and say, I'm miserable. I've been in and out of the VA hospital for 35 years. No one's been able to fix my PTSD, but my friends tell me you can. And then to have this man walk out free of PTSD symptoms 6 months later.
Wow.
And I'm not unique in being able to do that. Anybody who's doing modern dynamic trauma release therapy can do that for veterans. And that's really exciting. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about talking about this. This is one of the reasons I have a radio show, is because we have all these people suffering who do not need to suffer any longer, because we have a way to fix this. And so...
Is it terribly expensive?
No, it's not. In fact, good trauma recovery therapy is eventually going to make people self-reliant. so that they're doing something every day that will continue to resolve traumas as they come up and will keep them healthy. And there's some really wonderful trauma therapies, for instance, Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, which is done in a group in about 8 hours, and it's really quite impressively effective if the person will just keep doing the things that they have learned. And so I want to talk a little bit about what unifies all of the very different trauma therapies that are dynamic therapies.
Okay, let's do. Go.
They all look really different, and they all work really well. To start with, we have to understand that the brain operates on 4 different levels. 30 years ago, the cognitive therapists assumed that the brain was like a computer, and that you could just put in what you wanted.
You hear that. You hear people say that.
And get out what you want.
Put it in, and you can pull it out when you need it.
If you command your brain to do what you want it to do, it'll do what you want it to do. Well, that's only true if you're commanding it in the language that applies to that level of the brain. So we have these 4 levels of the brain. We can conceive of the top level of being our cerebral cortex, which is our conscious mind, the top half of the brain. That's the part where we do all of our decision-making and our cognitive processing. The cognitive therapists originally thought that the whole brain acted like the cerebral cortex, but it doesn't. Underneath the cerebral cortex, kind of in the middle of the brain, we have what's called the limbic system. And the limbic system regulates and manages our relationships. And so this is the center that holds and processes love and loss and grief and loneliness and all of these relationship kind of feelings, attraction and romance. This is all in the limbic system.
Okay.
And then below that we have the primitive brain. It's also sometimes called the reptilian brain. The top of that, we don't really have a simple word for it. It's called the diencephalon. And it's a bunch of structures in the primitive brain. This part of the brain holds and manages symptoms and feelings that are related to depression. So a lot of your hopelessness, feeling trapped, feeling in despair, these kinds of feelings are processed in the diencephalon. Below that we have the brainstem. And this is the thing that we really didn't know before that's really important. The brainstem holds the trauma core. The brainstem processes and holds and regulates and responds to all of the feelings and experiences that cause anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, phobias, and panic. This is all brainstem stuff. Well, the brainstem doesn't use words. The cerebral cortex, the top level of the brain, uses words. The middle of the brain responds to images and emotions.
Feelings.
Yeah,
okay.
that's why guided imagery has been so useful over the last 50 years, is because it addresses the middle of the brain. But when you get to the brainstem, the language of the brainstem is sensation. And that's about it. And we know this.
Wait, so like hot, cold?
Well, if your brainstem is talking to you, trying to tell you something's wrong that you need to fix, the brainstem is going to talk to you by giving you a lump in your throat, or sweaty palms, or a tightness in your chest, or a headache, or a stomach ache. This is brainstem language when the brainstem is talking to you. So if you want to talk to the brainstem and you want to say safety, healing, relax, you're going to do that with a massage or a hot bath or wrapping up in a warm blanket or someone hugging you.
So you can't just say, I need a hug.
Right.
You've got to experience.
Right. And so,
okay.
for instance,
you've got to show it by doing it. Okay.
Right. And do this with me. One of the really effective little trauma interventions that's been done with children in refugee camps is called butterfly hugs. And to do that, you just put your hands on either shoulder, and you just alternate very gently patting either shoulder. Very, very simple thing, but this is brainstem language. This is saying, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm nurtured.
Interesting. I tripped into something years ago that I expressed the other day on the show. And sometimes lonely. I worked with people that were single and had some problems, loneliness, and certainly didn't have your background. But what I did do was I said, when you can't stand any longer, just bring your left hand up and give it a kiss, because you're okay. Give yourself a love. Now, you've just told me why that feels good.
That's right. That's right.
Because you're giving yourself love.
Right.
Interesting.
So the levels of the brain is the first step to understanding trauma therapy. The second step is understanding what we call neural networking. Now, we mentioned earlier that we have this neuroplasticity, the brain's creating new neurons.
Okay.
Well, the hippocampus area particularly likes to create new neurons every time you have an emotional experience. It produces a new neuron. And this is very new science. This is like the last year or two that we've learned this. So we have these different parts of the brain, and they express these new neurons. They build a new brain cell every time there's an emotional experience. So suppose a person has a very frightening experience. Here's a brand new brain cell that's holding the emotion of that experience. When it's first created by that experience, it's not connected to any other neurons. Brain cells have all these little dendrites that connect to other brain cells. Well, this new one isn't connected to anything. Ideally, what's supposed to happen is after we have a painful experience, then we get to safety and we get to support. And our support people hug us and hold us and cry with us and say it's all better. And we bring up that feeling, and the tears come out, or maybe a little shaking or trembling as we activate that neuron. And then all of the support and kindness around it connects that neuron to a whole bunch of happy neurons, a whole neural network of peace and calm and safety. If that happens, that traumatic experience will be permanently and completely neutralized, and it will never trouble you again. But
okay, wait, I have to ask a question here. I've been through a lot of stuff, as all of us have, if we live long enough. And someone recently said, how has it been living in Utah for about 27 years? And I said, it's been great. But I said, in the last few months, I've felt peace along the way, what I called peace. But in the last few months, it's become a reality. I have this testimony that's become a fortress, and I have this great peace about me no matter what's going on. I can quickly go back to that place or move forward or go up or however you do it. But it's a place that I'm very comfortable in now, and I wasn't. I've spent years going through the same stuff everybody goes through with kids and being single and just events that happen in our lives. And I'm in this wonderful place, things happen, and I go, well, I can see how that might be, but for some reason it's not shaking any part of me. It's taken a lifetime, and I've worked at it. But you just described it.
yes, I just described it.
Say the end part again, because it's not only everything has come together to support it, but there's a connectivity that happens there that I didn't quite understand, but you've explained it to me. So if you'll do that again.
Right. If we have a painful experience and the next time we activate it, we link it to a whole network of peaceful and calming associations, and we can easily have this assisted by other people who love us, but you can do it in your own mind by going to your quiet, your peace, your meditation, whatever tranquility or faith resources you have. If you link up your trauma experiences to all of your peace, then that trauma will never trouble you again.
I think that's happened.
Yes, I think you've gotten there. And
yeah, it's a wonderful experience.
It is.
To recognize it,
yes,
and say, hey, everything is okay. No matter what happens, it's okay.
Right.
I can cope with it. I can deal with it. I've got enough things that are joining up and connecting, the happy stuff. Never
Yes.
thought about it that way.
Yes.
Great thought. So glad you were here today. It's a good
that's
feeling.
very
I
important.
would wish this for everyone,
Yes.
particularly people going through a lot of stuff. And if you're on this planet, you're going through a lot of stuff. You have your moments. I remember saying to somebody years ago, I just wish I could keep the spiritual feeling all the time, every day. And she looked at me and said, be grateful if you understand what it is.
Right.
You will have them here and there, but you don't live in that place because we're not in heaven. We're not in the celestial kingdom yet. So you'll have moments, but boy, to feel it all come together, and you just described how it does. Because I do that. I find myself, I'll take an afternoon just sitting and looking out the window occasionally. I don't do it very often, but occasionally. And it kind of all comes together. And I thought, this is what peace feels like.
That's absolutely right. And the reason it takes us a long time to get there is because most of us have traumas that, instead of linking to peace, have linked to other traumas. So we have big networks in our brains of trauma, pain, sadness, and grief. Our brain wants to be healthy, so our brainstem or our limbic system will bring up our pain whenever we're really peaceful and calm to try and link it to the peaceful, calm feelings and neutralize it. And that's called an emotional release. And people who don't understand what that is hate it. And so they try to avoid it. They try to repress their feelings. They try to keep their minds really busy with all sorts of distractions. Like you've seen people who always have the TV or the radio or the computer going. Sometimes people can't even fall asleep unless the TV is on, playing loud music all the time. These are people who are trying to avoid the emotional release. They don't want their brains to slow down. They don't want them to go into that slow brainwave, alpha or theta wave state where painful emotions come up to be neutralized and linked. They don't want to do that because they don't know what it is and they're scared of
Could
it.
this be why people have so much difficulty sleeping?
Absolutely.
And it gets
Huge
worse
part.
as you get older. It's your body only lets you sleep for about 4 hours, and then it's hard to get back to sleep. Just everyone that I have known from the time they are about 60, they begin to have trouble sleeping at night. Are we just grinding over this stuff at some level and can't seem to let go? You're right. Turn on the TV,
Right.
watch the news, don't think.
Right. When people start to fall asleep, their brain slips into first a natural alpha state, which is a slow brainwave state, and then an even slower state called theta, which is deep sleep. And that's where the brain fixes itself. So as people are starting to slip into sleep, they're going into this trance-like natural alpha state, their pain will come up. And so people who have trauma and have too much trauma and don't know how to deal with it, they will keep themselves up very, very, very late until they're absolutely exhausted and hit the pillow. Or they'll lay down and they'll keep their mind racing constantly to keep it in a fast brainwave state so those feelings don't come up.
We'll be back in just a few minutes. We have a couple more commercials. And can I keep you here all day and maybe into the weekend? And we just keep talking. I'm speaking with Diana Hoffman. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to our broadcast. Please do us a favor and take a moment to call, text, or email your friends and family and let them know about this show. We're live on this radio station, KHQN AM 1480, and on UtahValleyLive.com, where this show will be archived for later viewing. Also, Utah Valley Live is seeking additional programming for our growing network, talk shows about religion or politics, how-to shows, and more. Go to UtahValleyLive.com and send us your contact information and the type of show you would like to broadcast. Thank you. For better health, you need to have the whole body vibration machine. You should, because it gives you a no-work workout. This machine works all your muscles for you, and it feels like a full-body massage. Whole body vibration is about 3 things: movement, reaction, and gravity. It increases muscle strength, tones and firms muscles, builds lean muscle mass, improves flexibility and circulation, decreases cellulite, helps back pain, fibromyalgia, and osteoporosis. You stand or sit on the platform of the machine, and it moves you in a seesaw-type motion, bringing your body slightly out of a natural equilibrium. By keeping your body constantly out of balance, your muscles have to work and react, and it feels good. 10 minutes on the whole body vibration machine is like a hard 1-hour workout at the gym. Call for a free demonstration, 801-362-9552. We will bring the machine to you and set it up at your home or office, 801-362-9552.
Being sick, and I'd say, what? Oh, we're back. We're sitting here chatting, and we're live and going. I'm Pat Sheranian, and you're on a program that I just am thoroughly enjoying today. If you're on 1480 AM, thank you so much for being with us. And if you're on pat.utahvalleylive.com, thank you for joining us. Diana Hoffman has really been great today. She's going to be, I think, we just decided, she's going to be on Friday. Every Friday she'll have her own show on in this time frame. And that will be just wonderful because she's got volumes and volumes. In fact, I asked her, for most of us putting a show together, we do some research. We are aware who's coming on and we're interviewing them or what we're going to be talking about. But when I ask how long it takes her to put a program together for about an hour, with commercials it's less, but I think you said 8 hours to put one of the shows
That's
together
correct.
for research.
I put in about 8 hours of research, and then I write the show after that. So 8 to 12 hours to prepare each show.
I wanted her to come on every day, but she couldn't find that much time in her life right now. So if we can have her on Fridays, that will be absolutely wonderful. And as you know, we're working with the Daily Herald, a local newspaper, so I want to make sure we get you in our ad that's running right now. All right, where were we? I'm so excited about this. Peace of mind that can come, about staying awake, because we keep trying to resolve things, though we're not aware of it. Our brain wants to resolve these issues, and it's called release.
Right, emotional release. The brain was designed to release and resolve traumas by networking painful emotions to larger networks of happy, peaceful emotions. So we have a couple of problems in our society. One is that people aren't learning how to really build and connect their networks of safety. So sometimes they have to be trained to do that. And second, people have no idea what an emotional release is, and they avoid it like the plague. And so I'll have men call me up and say, I feel like I'm going crazy.
It's scary, very
yeah,
frightening.
it's very scary. I just started crying and shaking the other day, and I think I'm having a mental breakdown. And I'm like, I know they're not having a mental breakdown. I know their body's trying to trauma release, but they don't know how to pace it very slowly and gently and carefully. And that's another challenge. People who have a lifetime of pain built up and have not been releasing as they go, like you do, Pat.
Yeah, I'll shout at the wall if I have to.
Right. They feel like the little boy with his finger in the dike from the Dutch legend. They feel like if they take their finger out of the dike and they let that pain out, the dike will break and they will wash away and be annihilated by their pain. And actually, the truth is, if people were to bring up all of their stuff at once, they would feel suicidal. It's too much pain to deal with. And so people have to learn that the brain is very sophisticated. Just as it can identify a single memory from your past, it can also just select one little cluster of a neural network and just network that little area of pain in very manageable segments. So pacing is perhaps the most essential skill to teach people. Pacing, how to go slowly and gently and make it very manageable and not overwhelming as they resolve all this painful material.
You know, when someone passes away, a husband, a spouse, I hear people saying to them, it'll take a while. It'll take a while. And I remember hearing that when my daughter died. And I wanted to go, for what? Will the pain go away entirely? Will the memory go completely out of my brain? It doesn't. She's been gone almost 15 years, and some days it's like yesterday. And other times it's okay. It's okay. It's manageable. But if people can't release that over a period of time, it has to be terrible, because you then are, I would think, you stop functioning. Eventually, you just break down to a point where you're non-productive.
Right. What actually happens is if people don't resolve their pain, they try to shut off their brain's access to that particular area.
Which brings up medication.
Right. Medication and repression. People repress their pain. They put it in a closet of their mind, meaning they just tell their brain not to access that neural network. Well, neural networks can be accessed deliberately by sending nerve connections down, but they can also be triggered by neuropeptides that are tied to that particular emotion. And there's a different neuropeptide in the brain for every emotional state. And so if your brain floods with a neuropeptide of pain, old painful memories that you have tried to repress will suddenly come to the surface all at once.
Oh, dear.
And so then people will have intense flashbacks or intense sudden episodes of depression or grieving or sadness. And most of the time they'll be doing their best to keep it under wraps and to keep functioning, but that stuff will suddenly come up with intensity, and they will do or say or feel things that they really wouldn't prefer to do or say or
Well,
feel.
speaking in our society, our particular culture, we're supposed to behave.
Right.
Regardless of the circumstances, we're supposed to behave, to look and act as if we were put together and we're adults, and we even expect it of our children. And we are supposed to be pleasant to other people when we're in a world of pain and hurt.
Right.
Because we've been told and taught to do that.
Right, and in fact, we have a culture where a lot of us were raised with "don't cry," you know, or
yeah,
don't
it's
let
true.
anybody see you cry, or if you cry, you're a baby, or if you cry, you'll be punished. And for purposes of resolving emotional pain, that's kind of a cultural disaster.
It really is. I mean, I can see where I remember saying to children when they were hurt, "Don't cry, it'll be okay." Well, maybe it wasn't okay. Maybe
Right.
they really needed to
Right.
cry. As I've gotten older, I have found that crying is a release. It certainly, I remember thinking, if I keep crying like this, I'm going to have a face that's totally wrinkled. Okay, I was modeling then in New York. So you can't cry and ruin your face. But you do. You tell yourself, don't cry. I can handle this. I can handle this. I'm strong enough. I can handle this.
Right, and what we ideally want to be taught as children and teaching our children is what Peter Levine tells us to do in his book, Trauma Proofing Your Kids, which is tell them, it's okay to cry, just let it all out. Some tears might come, some shaking might come. I will be right here with you, and I will stay with you as long as you need.
So put them in a safe place.
Right, put them in a safe place and let them cry as long as they need to, and make it okay. And then what they've done is they've brought up that whole neural network of pain, and they've connected it to your warmth and peace and embrace and comfort, and it's neutralized, it's done.
Diana Hoffman is my guest, and she has a clinic down in Salem, and the name of it is, tell me again.
Light Spring Counseling.
Life Spring Counseling, and her phone number, go ahead and give that, Diana.
801-735-7814.
And you have a blog?
I do. I have a radio blog at healingtalkradio.com.
That's easy, healingtalkradio.com. Is there a website or something else that people can go to, or if they want to look you up?
There's a website at Light Spring Counseling, and that's lightspringcounseling.com.
Great name. When you listen to people all day long who are having situations that are very difficult, how do you handle it?
I love my work, and every day I come home from work much more energized than when I left, because I do dynamic trauma releases with people. I put them in safe places. I make them peaceful and comfortable. I help them release their pain, and they come out of there saying, I have never seen therapy like this before. And people leave my office safe and peaceful and happy, even if we've been doing trauma release. And so I love my work. It makes me happy.
So you're energized by it.
I do, yeah.
Okay, instead of having it put you away.
Right, it never
You've been through
overwhelms
this,
me.
and you've learned a few things along the way.
Right.
I think also it's energizing when you realize there is an end, that, and I think people need to understand that which has to do with hope and faith. That, but when you lose those, either hope or faith, then you become very desperate.
Yes.
And so I'm glad that you're there to help people through this. And are you everyday practice? Can they come and see you any day by appointment?
I see people 3 days a week.
Okay.
But I also know lots of other good practitioners who do therapies similar to this or therapies that are complementary to this. And so between us, we can usually see
with
everybody
5
needs
of you
to be seen.
working
Yeah.
and I guess I wouldn't think of Salem. I would think maybe Provo or maybe Salt Lake, but I guess I didn't think the other direction unless I could go to St. George. So you must have taken a little risk when you decided to do this and set this up. So how long has the clinic been there?
It's been there since about 2002, so we're
Really?
going on 9 years, yes.
And you all stay busy.
Yes, we do.
How about people wanting to get divorced? They still care. They don't even know why they're going through it. They just don't want to live together anymore.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. That's one of my favorite
We don't have a lot of
things to work
time,
with.
but it just hopped
Right.
into my mind because I'm around people that are really having, half of the people I know are divorced. And it's
Okay.
getting worse. We used to be in our little LDS communities. We could hold it together better, but now we're up with the national ratings on this
Yes,
scale.
we are. With divorce, 2 things need to happen. First, the couple needs to learn to communicate with each other because very often they have poor communication skills. That's why they're getting divorced. They can't problem solve. The second thing that needs to happen is each of them needs help in personally releasing all the pain and trauma that they've experienced with their spouse. And they do not know how to do this on their own. And if people try to do forgiveness with all intensity and effort, but they're only doing it at a cerebral cortex level, it's very superficial. The pain and the hurt still remain.
Well, there's something
underneath.
called anger in there, too.
Right.
A
If
lot of
we
anger.
do the full emotional release, if we completely resolve all the pain and hurt they've had in their marriage with each other, then they are in a place where forgiveness is easy and almost automatic. And then they
Really?
can come back and make a new start. And I'm talking about
How,
situations
and were you talking
where-
about years and years of counseling?
Well, I'm talking about like working with couples where the husband had domestic violence problems, like he had been physically abusive, and the wife had gone out and had an affair.
Oh.
And bringing these two back together, teaching them how to communicate, and then spending not a short time, like it was about a year, teaching them how to release all their trauma, and then teaching them how to repair their attachment and bonding, and having them create a really good life together.
They're going to line them up outside your door. But you get to listen and watch on Fridays starting in next week. How about that?
That sounds
All right.
very exciting.
Diana Hoffman will be with us a week from this Friday with her program. She'll be on by herself. She will be available to take any of your questions via the chat room and our email. You can find her at home, and I guess you have an email you can give out. And we're out of time, so we're not going to have that happen today. But you have her phone number. Thank you for being with us. I'm Pat Sheranian, wishing you a great day.